week to tell managers how they should really run their teams right now. And these were some of the top line principles that we communicated to them. So first, continuity is key. Really trying to keep everybody moving in the same direction with all the uncertainty that you're having right now. Obviously, you have a plan based on the reality of the situation, and you keep everybody moving forward and confident that that plan is something that you all have to move forward on. But it's also, the plan is in constant flux because the facts on the ground are changing. But you have a plan, but the plan is obviously changing, so you need flexibility. The other thing about continuity is really thinking about establishing schedules where people can be there at 9, they can leave at 5. Just because everybody switched to remote doesn't mean that you still have an office schedule. People will literally go insane if you try to start stretching them into the evenings or on the weekends. It doesn't give you, being remote doesn't give you a license as a boss to change people's schedules. You really have to keep that continuity that exists in the office. The reason it works in the office is because people are productive between those hours and when they can focus. You need to be evaluating if people have what they need. So we'll go into this a little bit around needs around remote, but managers, good managers are asking people what they need right now through surveys. They recognize that some people don't have that bandwidth that's necessary for uploading all those files, for example, or doing those video chats. They don't have the right headphones. They don't have the right computer software. There's, for the money that normally was going to food in the office, for example, it can start going towards areas where it can help you be more productive working remotely, like that kind of hardware and software. New communication principles, we'll get into that as well, but basically, when you're looking at communication principles on remote teams, there's a couple really important areas that what you need from your boss is really over communication. Over communication on what's the plan, when are we meeting, how frequently are we meeting, what does the business look like? You can avoid, bosses can avoid a huge amount of anxiety when they're telling people when they think things are going to get bad. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but if you look at history and how people have managed with anxiety, a lot of anxiety is just not understanding where people stand. And so it's really important to communicate. And this is if you have a couple people who report into you as well. We might have people on your middle managers as well. It's really important to tell people where they stand, even if the news is not great. There's an analogy from the Blitz in London, and I know it's sort of a crazy analogy to pull out, but they said that people were actually less anxious when they could hear the sirens. They knew that the sirens would tell them when to go home. They could go about their shopping. They could go about and do their day. When the sirens came, they knew it was time to get home and hunker down. So that proactive communication. If you're not getting it from your boss while you're working remotely, it's important to nudge them on that. Obviously, keeping meetings. Just because you're working remotely doesn't mean that you should be eliminating certain meetings. Should you be restructuring those meetings? Yes. There's a meeting protocol that I really like called the level 10 meeting structure, and it's taught through the traction method. I think it's EOS.com, and I like that a lot because it sets up a meeting structure which forces you to actually make decisions. Very hard to make decisions when you're not, you don't have people around you frequently who you can go to and ask them for a quick decision. When you're remote, you want all your meetings to be driving towards decisions, right? So that you can then assign them to different people. Another communication principle that you can set for yourself as an employee is creating an accountability chart. Bosses right now are looking at, what does the org structure look like remotely? Who exactly is accountable for what? So being proactive and saying, okay, this is my job, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm accountable for. So you stay on the same page, with your report or with the person you're reporting to, or even the people that are reporting up to you in this stage is really key. Tricky issues like childcare. We're telling managers, don't wait for people to come to you about childcare. Go to them first. If you're on the opposite side of the spectrum here and your boss hasn't talked to you about this situation, it's time to pull out a schedule and say, hey, my kids are, I can manage myself and I can manage up here, but it's very hard to manage my kids right now because of their age they're in, etc. So what I suggest is you and I go through a list of the meetings that you absolutely need me to be on with FaceTime. If not, maybe I can give this to someone else if this is a client meeting or something, and there's there's the chance that a child can interrupt right now. Maybe that person can cover for me. Can we move this meeting, for example, because this is a time when a kid isn't napping, or this is a time when I need to, deal with lunchtime, things like that. I mean, now is the time to have this conversation. Also with your significant other, obviously. I don't want to get into family dynamics, but we're having a really interesting sort of gender a line where gender roles are being tested like there's no tomorrow. I mean, you have men and women trying to work remotely from home, and what we want to avoid is this trap that women often get into, where because women are historically paid less than men, the men still get more time to go off and do their work alone, and while the women are watching the kids, and the women are their jobs are considered to be more expendable. And I'm not saying women's jobs are more expendable at all, but you don't want that dynamic to start playing out where, oh, well, my spouse makes more than me, or my significant other makes more than me, so therefore I should be the one watching the kids. I think the way to mitigate that is to have the conversation around, no, my job is actually, my career is an investment. And even if I'm not making as much right now, I could be making a lot more later, but I have to invest in it right now. And now is the time to make sure that we're really watching, and our schedules are juggled so that we each can manage this. Okay, so the other part is let people know how their work will be evaluated. That's what I say to leaders, but I also think it's incredibly important that people who report into large structures don't even ask their boss, but say, hey, at this stage, now that I'm working remotely, here's how I think you're going to be evaluating my work. Can we agree on this? So when I talk about evaluation, one, there's a schedule you can set up where you say, I'm going to show you what I worked on at 5 o'clock every afternoon, or, set a time for that, or here are the Google Docs, or you share a list of what you've done, just over communicating what you've done, because we know there's a lot of stress when you feel like nobody knows whether or not you've been working. When you're sitting in an office, obviously you have visibility. They know you're sitting there. They know you're on the phone. They can see it. But when you're at home, there is a lot of anxiety around, do they know I'm working? Do they know what I'm doing? So really being proactive and over communicating in that area is incredibly helpful as a remote employee, and also as a remote boss, it's very much appreciated. And then mitigating loneliness and discomfort. People are isolated right now, so one of the things that we recommend with bosses is to really take time for your team to have coffee hours. We're doing a dance party at PowerToFly tomorrow night, where the kids will be involved. Dance party / happy hour, so people will either they'll dance and they'll bring their drinks, and vice versa. So stuff like that. We also have a channel called the Bright Side of what's happening, of Bright Side of COVID. So we're sharing news about people giving to charities and other areas, how we can help, sort of people coming together in this crisis as well. We have a warm and fuzzy feedback channel where we have clients who post, we take notes from clients that have congratulated us, we put it in there. Also team appreciation channel. You can do all these things on Slack, Skype, Google, there's you can have a Google Doc for it. Just get the appreciations going. It's really, I mean, if your boss isn't doing it, that's fine. Start one on your own, because your boss is probably incredibly overwhelmed. So initiative in this area is very, very appreciated. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so those are some overarching themes. So common early mistakes. I posted this incredibly unflattering picture of myself when I was probably breastfeeding, to show you how not to set up a workspace. A lot of people, when they start working remotely, they're like, this is great. I've been dying to work from my couch for years. Like, finally. It's the worst place to work from, and it just makes you more stressed. Set up a workspace. I know it's hard, and it's especially hard if you're in a small place where you don't have your own room. I found that there's these great like screens that you can get, these felt screens for soundproofing. You can get cheap versions of those on Amazon. You can make your own. You can literally like set up a cardboard tent so your kids, or cardboard wall so the kids don't come. I mean, you literally write office on it. Noise canceling headphones. That's really important as well. I had bad headset down there, but one thing about headsets is, while we're on it, is make sure that your significant other doesn't have a noise canceling headset that makes your significant other incredibly loud and dismissive of you being able to speak. I personally have this problem where I gave my husband the AirPods that cancel all the noise, so he doesn't think that he's being loud when he's being incredibly loud. So he's now agreed to turn the noise canceling part off of it. So headphones can get tricky. But it's important to really have a good headset that's specific to doing video calls, because I've seen so many people get tripped up on that, and they spend a lot of time focusing on headsets. And headsets are out there. There hasn't been a run on headsets, and UPS and Amazon, places like that, are still shipping. And your boss should also, you can look at that as well with them. Other common early mistakes. Again, not setting up boundaries really can lead to some big mistakes in the beginning. Boundaries being, oh, I'm just going to sit in the living room and try to work, instead of, hey, I have to go to work from 9 to 5, and maybe I'll come up every hour or two to check on things, or I'll peek through, but I'm at work right now. I love Brene Brown. She says that boundaries will allow you to be generous with people. So setting boundaries is key. Turning your phone on do not disturb, all these things. I know we're in a really distracting time right now where the news constantly is coming out, but you can set yourself up with no boundaries. That's key. And I have some tips on that in the next slide as well. Having a schedule, really important. I should have made this like more positive, not no's, but I already went into schedule. I'm not going to belabor that. Bad internet, learn how to do a speed test. Ookla.com is a place I go for speed test, OOKLA. Instead of slamming your head against the wall saying like, my internet stinks, you can actually test it and get a speed test. And sometimes you just need to reboot. I find that actually my phone sometimes works as a better hotspot than my internet. So if you need a hotspot plan on your phone, that's also incredibly helpful. And obviously make a list of the changes that you need to be making in order to be productive. So another common early mistake is just people don't log off when they should. And they often work harder when they're working remote, because they're worried again about this idea that their boss is not seeing them work hard enough, or is not seeing them work. And so therefore they think that their boss doesn't think that they're working hard enough. Boundaries are really important. Logging off is important. And if your boss is gonna, I'm not saying ignore your boss after 5 o'clock, because you wouldn't do that anyway, but there should be an escalation path, obviously, with remote that is similar to what's in the office. And I have tips on that as well in the next slide, when we go into productivity tips. And just to spice things up, I'm going to change my virtual background. So I highly recommend that everybody have a little, for a little more variety right now, you can sort of change things up with these virtual backgrounds on Zoom. So now I'm in space. So productivity tips. One, I've really, and this, by the way, this is the last slide. We're going to go into questions after this. I'll stop talking, but or I'll stop talking at you. But productivity. So get your questions ready. Productivity tips. I've been working on my productivity as a remote team member for years, and it's a struggle. It's a struggle to stay focused. It's a struggle to even sometimes stay motivated when you're by yourself, and you're not in rooms of, you're not in an office to get that sort of that visual recognition. So one of the things that I found really helps me is to focus on outcomes and not to-dos. I will sit down, usually on a Sunday night after the kids go to bed, and I will put together a list of the 3 to 4 outcomes that I want for the week. And when I talk about outcomes, I mean 3 to 4 things I really want to impact, that I want to drive forward at the company. So, and they're rather large, and they're outcomes or impact that have to do with, do I want to get more do I want, one outcome could be I need to get on the phone with more potential investors. So instead of it's a to-do list of get on the phone with potential investors, it's figure out how to get on the phone with potential investors. And the to-dos under that list are literally one is putting together a list of potential investors. The second is putting together an email cadence of those potential investors. The third item is figuring out what the investment conversation would actually be around. So this is just a hypothetical. When I can break it then down into the to-dos after having that large outcome, I can then go into my calendar and I can block off 30-minute chunks to get these things done. And obviously I can also look at areas that I might be able to delegate, so I can focus on my other outcomes. Some people just do work outcomes. I actually like to break up my outcomes. I do work, and then I do home, and I do health. You can do work, family, and health. I think it's really important to keep a full perspective, because what we do with our family affects what we do with our work. Our health obviously affects everything, and they all go together. So, with health, one of my outcomes for the week is like, get on the bike 4 days a week. How am I going to do that? All right, well, I'm going to go to bed at 9 o'clock at night. I mean, you have to work backwards in a series of to-dos to make that outcome actually happen. And then I'll look back throughout the week. I'll have it calendared and broken up so that I know I can get it done. And then I'll often look back on the week before and see where, the areas that I need to make changes in because I didn't get something done. Did I not delegate something I could have delegated? Did I not block off that time? Did I get distracted? I have this tomato in the corner here for a reason. The tomato is a timer that I use. I don't actually use that timer. I have a plugin for my browser for Chrome, and it's a Pomodoro plugin. Pomodoro, like how you spell the tomato. And the concept here is that people work best when they can focus in 25-minute chunks. So I will set the timer, virtually on my screen, and when that timer puts pressure on me to do it, it's great. It's like I'm in a Pomodoro zone right now. Turn off my Slack, I turn off my phone, and it's amazing to me what I can get done in a 25-minute chunk versus trying to get something done throughout the day, just saying oh, I'll get it done when I have a moment. Now, the key here is that after the 25 minutes, the ringer goes off and you got to get up and walk around for 5 minutes and take a breather, and don't do anything work related. Get up and walk around. Okay. I love that. Incantations. I know that sounds a little coven-esque and witchy, but one of the things my part of my routine in the morning is I'll try to get up early. The first thing I do is start writing down my intention for the day around outcomes. I try not to look at the news. It's really hard right now, or my phone. I mean, some of the best business leaders out there, they have a rule: don't look at your phone in the morning. They wake up very early. They get into they have their whole process in the morning. Bob Iger, the chairman of Disney, spoke about this, that he takes an hour every morning, no phone looking, just he has his thoughts, he's sitting there with a notebook. If you commit something to paper too, you often feel better about it. It's a commitment, you're going to do it. So I try to do that. I try to meditate. I know it sounds cheesy, but it's really helpful for me to get in the right zone, especially right now because we wake up with a lot of stress. I physically can feel it in my chest, and I do meditations where I breathe. I just practice my breathing. I use Headspace for that, which is great. There's a million other free resources out there for meditation. I highly recommend it. But you have to wake up. I have to wake up before my kids. That's the truth. It's I can't do it before then. Otherwise I'll get interrupted. Then I try to do a little bit of exercise, but obviously it's hard. Gyms are closed right now. Look at my calendar, take anything off that doesn't make sense, add anything. And then focus on the work that really requires some brain power, like writing, stuff like that, because I get very burnt out by the end of the day. I cannot do writing usually after 3 o'clock. It's very hard for me. Incantations, like the incantations, I after I've meditated and throughout the day, if something's really annoying me, sometimes I'll just literally while I'm working remotely, sort of grip my hand and say, you got this, you got this. Sometimes my other incantation is wait 10 minutes. Something bothers me, I don't respond. I get out of I get up and I walk around and I get out of that mode. Often literally getting up and physically moving away while something is annoying you will help. It breaks that cycle. The worst thing you can do is respond to someone when you're angry. You wait 10 minutes and you get up and you get out of it, and they'll give you a different perspective. Really important with remote, because when we're in the office, you know, we have these different boundaries that we adhere to, but when we're remote, we don't have people who are sort of helping us with those boundaries. Things like even tone, like escalations can happen so quickly. That's one of the reasons why I say that, you know, when you over communicating is really important, especially around the bad stuff. Giving someone a heads up that something is going to happen that they're not going to like, you're giving your boss a heads up. So one of our big communication principles is to escalate the medium and not the message. This is super important. When you escalate the medium, you are, instead of sending someone 5 emails and being like, why aren't you responding to my email? Why aren't you responding to my email? Are you okay? Are you ignoring me? Do you hate me? Are you dead? No, you send them the one email. If they don't respond, then you get onto Slack or Skype or another platform that your company uses, and you say, hi, I just want to make sure you saw my email. If they don't respond to that, then you can text. If they don't respond to the text, then you can call. If by that point you might want to ask one of the colleagues, hey, have you heard from Clara today or something? I don't know, whether or not they what's going on, and they might say, yeah, she had to rush to the hospital with her dad. So then you're like, okay, good, I'm glad I didn't send those 5 emails. So that's really important. I already said show your managers what your goals are. I think that's really important for productivity. You know, we talked about outcomes. You can send your manager a list at the beginning of the week and say, hey, these are the outcomes I'm focused on. Am I on track? Am I off track? And we do a lot of one-on-ones at PowerToFly. I'm encouraging remote leaders to do skip levels right now and to really focus on talking to people, checking in continuously. But if you feel like you're not getting enough face time, literally send them the goals and say, am I on track here? You got to ask for freaking feedback and deliver it up and down. If you're frustrated by the time, you know, with the communication, then it's too late. With remote, one of the good opportunities is to literally start checking in more and saying, like after a sales call, if you're doing it remotely, you're not going to be able to go over to the person's office and say, hey, what'd you think? Instead, you call them up immediately afterwards and you say, hey, I want to hear what I did right, and I want to hear what I could have improved on. Setting up that process is really helpful, shows you're really proactive, and it's great and doesn't let things fester. Making connections, calling people, checking in, just making sure they're okay. People want to talk right now. I've been blown away by how, you know, salespeople who normally were so quick with us before, or people we were pitching to, just want to just talk about where they think the world is going. And so, you know, reaching out to that person that you might have had some tension with before in the office, now is an opportunity to even say, hey, I just wanted to check in on you. So there's just so many great opportunities right now to be curious about people, to get on the phone, all that stuff. Use your camera when you can as well. You can't read people's body language when you're remote, but it's super helpful to just make that connection. Okay, I think we're on to questions, right? Okay, we got a lot of questions. So I kind of want to see what people have been asking first before I go into these questions, what the live questions are. So
we haven't had anything come through live yet, but I'll keep monitoring.
Okay, awesome. So we're gonna, these are questions you've already submitted anyway, so technically they're live. So let's go to the first one. But click through because I think we have them bolded out in separate sections. Okay, at what time do you start your day and what does your morning routine look like? I talked about this already, so I try to wake up at 5:30, but it's really difficult right now when I don't have a reason to commute. So I've been waking up more like at 7:30. But again, having that alone time, I know people who wake up early are sort of, people are like, oh, it's so annoying that they wake up early. You just having time when the house is quiet to think is so valuable. So valuable right now. Let's go to the next question. How do you keep people up to date without flooding their inbox? We don't have other good online communication tools at our workplace. Well, I mean, my first suggestion there is like, can you get a good online tool pretty quickly? if you can be the proactive person to set up Slack or Skype, that's great. I know some institutions have been very wary about these, about having chats like that. So chat tools like that. So it's hard. I would say you could even say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about this in 15 minutes. Here are the top line items. Because I find that when people send incredibly long emails right now, nobody reads it. I heard a great line the other day, which was keep it Sesame Street simple. Oftentimes as a manager, you're told to repeat things at least 6 or 7 times for people to really get it. And that's fine. That's just how our brains work. And so if you're managing up and down in this situation, keep your email Sesame Street simple and offer to get on the phone with someone or a video chat to walk them through that. I try to do that. I never send people long emails anymore. It never really hurts.
So we've got a couple questions in the chat, but just as a suggestion, if you get the word from on high that they're not really down with something like Slack or something, Google Docs could be really helpful, if only for kind of tracking your to-do list over the course of the day. That way you can kind of check stuff off and it communicates to whoever you share that Google Doc with, like your supervisor, this is what you're getting done. They can kind of check on your progress without me bombard you with emails or vice versa. You could also use it as like a touch point to kind of keep track of what you want to talk to your boss about, at like a daily or weekly check-in, something like that would be a good idea.
Yeah, that's great.
So Sarah's asking, she's saying that she was going to a lot of networking events to try and find a job. How do I stop the stall in the job hunt? Networking virtually is proving to be much more difficult. Well,
Sarah, it's a fantastic question, because we're doing that at PowerToFly. So we have a virtual career fair that we're ramping up much sooner than we planned to. We had it planned for June 6th, and we're now going to do something much sooner in April. We are doing these daily live chats with clients who are hiring. I do want to say that, like, we're talking to a lot of companies out there. I don't want to give any false hope, but I want to give people the reality of what we're hearing on the ground right now, which is there are a lot of businesses that are trying to that have raised a lot of money in the last couple of months, because that was what was happening in the market. We were really at the top there. And in this situation, these businesses are actually saying now is the time for us to invest in our technology and operations so that we can come out of this much stronger. So we're seeing people definitely move forward and have those conversations. Virtual networking, I mean, we're providing it. Obviously, getting on video chats with people and making yourself available for that is really key. We're having a big event tonight, actually, virtual event with Microsoft as well. So that's proceeding. Companies are still doing it. They've just moved to virtual. So that's exciting. And I actually think this is going to be a really interesting opportunity, especially for women who can't normally, it's hard to go to a lot of networking events in the evenings for obvious reasons. We're already just seeing in the last week that people are trying to come up with virtual products that'll really create better experiences overall. And we're working on it as well here at PowerToFly. So my ambition is that we'll come out of this with some really good virtual products that'll actually dial back even some of these in-person events that can be very time consuming.
We've also got another question in the chat. Mackenzie wants to know about what your thoughts are on built-in comm tools within project management systems versus Slack or Skype.
I mean, my problem with that is that you often have, unless the team is all on that project management system, then it's hard. We have a bit of a product creep here where, you have the tech team on Jira, you have the marketing team on Asana, and it's overwhelming and so you want the chats to all be in the one spot. So we use, for all the entire team, we use Slack. But studies have been shown that people can't use more than 2 to 3, systems. So trying to keep one system on top of those 1 or 2 extra ones that you're keeping within the project management tools is really what I suggest.
All right.
Okay, let's
try moving to our next question. So how do you get your, sorry, do you want to read out loud? I know we've got some people dialed in.
You read it, please. Sorry, I jumped in.
So how do you get your team on board with using group chat like Slack or MS Teams? We've been remote for about 4 months and communication is lacking, leading to some of us feeling isolated.
So I'm thinking back to when we first started using Slack, and it was an interesting time because it was the fall of 2015. So it was a long time ago. And we were using Skype, which was not helping for us because we were all over the map and it just didn't have a good flow. And we had to be disciplined because I remember there was a big blow up where our CTO at the time was really annoyed that people were still emailing her, but it was senior people who were emailing her. So luckily it was sort of contained within a small group of people, but because some people literally refused to go onto Slack. So I'm saying it is actually more challenging than people think from a management perspective. So you have to we find that there's ways to incentivize people to get onto Slack. And one of which is like make Slack a really happy, fun place where there are distractions on there. That's totally okay. Like we have this channel right now, which is just giving me like so much joy. And where people are, again, posting videos and stories around like, the sort of the silver linings that are coming out of this crisis. And it's pretty addictive. It's hard not to check it. Tagging people that are very difficult to get on Slack is really helpful, and tagging them with positive messages, like not passive aggressive, like, hey, listen, all the time. And not over tagging people. I will say that as well. Like I am actually someone who I get over tagged big time. People don't need me to be looking at things often. And as someone who's trying to have her hands in 50 million things, I will always look at being tagged because why wouldn't I? That's, part of my job. But if you tag me too often, it gets incredibly difficult for me to, you don't want to be over tagging your bosses because it's stressful when someone else can manage something before it gets to them. So there are these rules that you could also you could have someone on your team. I'm not sure who asked this question, but you could almost put out some ground rules. Like we will post, joyous, fun things in this channel. We're going to have we're going to have a team appreciation channel where we're going to celebrate what people have done that are nice. I mean, it's even things like, thank you for team appreciation, like, tagging, like, Christina, for example, to say like, I so appreciated when she called me today, or I so appreciated how she jumped in on that client call. So that really helps. I know we have more questions too, so I want to go into that. This is good. We could have some breakouts on this.
Devashay wants to know, what's your rule of thumb for differentiating between meetings that are critical versus meetings that can be skipped, i.e. resolution possible via email? She says this for anybody that doesn't have access to the chat because they're dialing in. Devashay is saying it's easy to resort to scheduling a lot of meetings as a way to stay connected or make up for a lack of face-to-face interaction.
Yeah, I'm glad we're having this conversation because I said over communication, and I should have also caveated with being clear on where people are actually needed. So I'm often asking people, do I need to be on this meeting? Can I see this agenda? And one of the very good proactive things you can do is actually create an agenda for the meeting beforehand and send it to everybody who's in the meeting. Obviously give them time. Don't send it to them 5 minutes beforehand. And you actually you want less people on your meeting if you can help it, and so you can lead to decisions. You can highlight who you think should be the decision maker so that they know whether or not to show up. And that it's a great exercise in actually deciding who needs to be there from your perspective and who doesn't. And then the decision maker the person you think should be a decision maker can actually say, no, I actually don't think it's me. I think Devashay should be the person who should be in on this. Saves a huge amount of time. And again, it comes from this principle of organize yourself around meetings around how decisions need to be made and what the to-dos are out of that. And if you have an agenda where it's focused on decision makers, that can eliminate a lot of the people who don't need to be there.
No, that's a good point.
Does that help, Devashay? I mean, some of these things we didn't even practice enough. Thanks. I'm going to start practicing that more, but myself.
All right, so our next one wants to know, what is your best time management hack? We talked a little bit about the Pomodoro thing, but are there other things that you do throughout the day to kind of, keep yourself on task or keep yourself on schedule?
Blocking my calendar for work time. Like you really should write in your calendar working on a presentation. That's an important best time management hack. When I was, when the world was the world as we knew it 2 weeks ago, actually getting out and walking outside for lunch would restore my, my energy significantly. Being realistic on how you work, it's actually way more draining to work from home in many ways. So a big time management hack is understanding how, like, you're not forced to be in the office anymore. So when are the times that you're best at doing the work that you need to do? Is it in the morning when you do the writing work? Is it in the afternoon? I mean, part of the problem is that we're just totally consumed by this flow of energy, but we can be way more protective of the flow of communication that's coming our way than we let ourselves be in some ways. Like we have to be more proactive with people and literally say, you can put in a Slack channel, which I do sometimes, hey, for an hour now, I'm not going to be able to communicate with anybody because I'm working on some writing that I need to do. And most people can wait for an hour to ask you those questions. So being proactive about when you can't talk to people is important. It's funny, actually, when we started the Huffington Post, I was in charge of the homepage and all the headlines. And so I would get calls all the time. This was before Slack or anything, from my two bosses, Ariana Huffington and Ken Lair at the time. And, Ariana obviously didn't want to ignore her calls. And I would send an email, and I started to get really made fun of for this email, where I would literally send it to the entire company. And I would say, I'm going to the bathroom right now. I'll be back in 5 minutes. Because you wouldn't believe, like, if news would break when you were in the bathroom sometimes. And my phone or my computer would just blown up. Where are you? You need to change this headline right now. It was totally legitimate. But if I didn't tell them that I was going to the bathroom, then they would go. I would say, I'm going to the bathroom. Can you please email Nico or text Nico, call Nico or something like that? Or I'm on the subway right now. I will not be in touch. So I learned how to over communicate in my early 20s for that reason, because I realized how much stress I created for my senior management when I didn't tell them I would be offline. So that's in a newsroom. It's obviously like the most extreme case, but it helped with my own stress.
No, that's a good point. I mean, we talked about it on the sourcing call this morning, but like kind of treating your Slack status like we used to treat like your AOL instant message thing.
Yeah,
like,
we used AOL no matter
what. Yeah, you said it no matter what, right? You told people what you were doing every minute of the day. So if you kind of use that as like a shorthand, or I mean, I kind of treat it a little bit as like my virtual assistant too. If I throw up a status that says like I'm editing something or I'm doing social posts or whatever, people kind of know where they're going to catch you in, if they're going to catch you like, with your head down and focused on a really big project, or if if you're just getting back from, the gym or whatever.
I mean, yes, I think it's good. I don't think a lot of bosses pay attention to that. So part of it is literally sending them an email. I mean,
true.
Certainly my bosses back in the day were not on AOL Instant Messenger. So sending them an email saying, I'm going to be in the bathroom and you can email this other person, or you can text this other. I mean, it just like was a phone call thing, but I'm not going to be able to pick up my phone for the next couple of minutes.
All right, yes. So this next question wants to know more about meetings. How can we navigate remote meetings with lags and people speaking over one another?
Yeah, okay, so one of my advice on remote meetings, which I'm terrible at myself, is like start the meeting 2 minutes early if you're the person who starts the meeting. It's really important. Let's say like Vince Lombardi said that if you're 5 minutes, if you're on time, you're late. So the policy, maybe it was Vince, be there 10 minutes early. I mean, my co-founder and I actually have a policy of being 10 minutes early to every in-person meeting in New York, and it actually relieves a lot of stress to always be 10 minutes early. So you should do that as well with 2 minutes early. The other idea here too is like, don't book 30-minute calls, hour-long calls, book 55-minute calls, book 25-minute calls. We're not great at that at PowerToFly, but we're going to start doing that more as well. So, I mean, the problem with speaking lags, it's happening less and less. The technology is getting better. But there's things you can do. First, turn off your video. That causes most of the lags. So you turn off your video and that'll change things. I don't see people speaking over one another too much. I actually see a lot of people who should be speaking, not speaking. So you can have a protocol though, where you have a raise your hand and you have everybody on video when you can have them on video, or you have someone monitoring the chat to say hand raise. So that really helps as well. But we run a lot of really big meetings and people tend to be pretty organized, especially when you have an agenda with the decision makers as well.
And
these are great questions.
A lot of these tools have a hand raise feature. Like Zoom has one, we just don't use it that often. So yeah, I think you're right. Hand raising is super crucial.
Sorry, there's a big wasp in here that I thought I'd killed. I think it's back to kill me. Okay.
All right, so our next question has to do with kids. So with my son's preschool out until, what is this, April 20th? He's 3 years old. How can I still be productive? My husband is still going to work because they're not shutting down, and he works in the security field. We have no one. I just want to be productive and feel at ease.
Yeah, my kids are out of school till the 20th too, of April. I mean, my first piece of advice is take it easy on yourself. You're just not, it's really hard right now, and everybody's adjusting, and even your workplace is getting a little bit more relaxed because we're being forced to. The world has been forced to slow down dramatically. It's very hard when you have a boss who doesn't have these concerns, and maybe the boss has kids but doesn't have to deal with the kids so much because they have childcare, stuff like that. So instead of throwing up your arms and saying oh, I'm so frustrated, I can't deal with this right now, my advice again is to be very proactive about what your schedule looks like. I mean, Nicole and I had a back and forth last night where I think she was trying, Nicole, you can wave your hand and say hi, but you were trying to get a newsletter out for me, and it was getting later and later and later, and I was distracted by a million other things, so I wasn't communicating very well with you. And so you were waiting for me, and then I said, okay, I'm ready, and you said, well, I don't have any childcare, and my husband's not at home right now. And I said, oh, okay, well, and then I messaged you and I said, I would have not done the other tasks if you had told me that you had a time limit on your childcare. So I would have rearranged my schedule for you to do this. And then, so oftentimes your boss just needs to know where you stand in that moment to help you, because your boss needs you to be productive. Otherwise you can't be productive. So you say to your boss, I can do this in these hours because of my childcare situation, or because my kid is sleeping, then that is looked upon very, very well, kindly.
And can I also just chime in here and say, I read something on Facebook that I thought was really helpful. I think as parents in this time when we're having 1, 2, 3 children at home, we maybe feel the pressure to be these super parents who know how to homeschool and do all of these arts and craftsy things and have all of these amazing lunches. And it is just okay if your children survive. It's okay if they just make it back to school. They don't need to turn into Einsteins over this time. It's okay. So that kind of made me feel a little bit better. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah. I recommend anybody watches Jimmy Fallon, him trying to put on his show last night with his girls running around. It just made me laugh so hard.
And just from the child-free side of the fence here, guys, we're not expecting you to be super moms. We're not expecting you to be Martha Stewart. Seriously, if you have problems, or if you need help or whatever, leaning on each other is how we do this. And I can only speak for myself, I know, but I am more than happy to step in if somebody is facing deadline versus child that needs sustenance and is screaming. I'm more than happy to step in. We're gonna have to pull some stuff together. We're gonna have to make it work. Cutting everybody some slack right now is helpful, I think, for teams as a whole, to try and really be realistic about what you got going on. If you've got a crying kid in the background but he's being taken care of, tell me that off the jump, and that way I don't need to be sitting here thinking, somebody dealing with that kid? Do you need to go? Is that all right? No worries.
I'm just laughing because my co-founder has been doing meetings out of her bathroom, so you've been seeing a lot of that. All right, cool.
All right, so what is your go-to activity to take a break inside of your home? And I feel like this is a really important question because not all of us are in a situation where we can step outside. Some of us are lucky enough to have, like a yard or a neighborhood you can walk through or something. But if you're stuck inside, what's your go-to activity? Especially for something that, like you said, for your Pomodoro method, that's not going to then distract you and lead to, a 20-minute break instead of a 5-minute break.
Yeah, sorry, I was tracking the wasp with my eyes. I'm gonna turn this off. So let's see. So that if the wasp goes behind me, you can tell me. Thank you. So, gosh, activities within the home. Okay, so I am a huge fan of puzzles. Super zen for me. One of my favorite things to do is to put a book on tape in one ear in the AirPod so that I can still hear the kids when they really need me. And I put a puzzle on my table, and throughout the day, I mean, I won't do it without the AirPods, but if I'm really stressed about something, I'll often go to my puzzle area and I'll put together some pieces, and just that little sense of accomplishment of like getting some puzzle pieces together just bolsters me. And I know it sounds crazy, but it's really zen. So you can get that online. I just love doing that. If you got plants, that's really helpful. A lot of us can't go out and get plants right now, but that's really helpful. Gosh, what else? Again, like one of the things, I mean, I will admit, like 2 weeks ago, I was seeing all this happen, and we have a lot of very, very large international clients. And so we were hearing around the globe what was happening, and I was starting to see the tea leaves really go in the wrong direction. And to sort of quell my stress around what was happening, I started to listen to books on tape around people who had dealt with major global crises in the past. Business leaders, wartime leaders, just great sort of confidence while you're taking breaks and how other people have dealt with these situations, and pair that with a puzzle and you're all good. that's my go-to. Everybody's different. Anybody else? Anybody on the phone? I mean, people can.
Yeah, please feel free to chime in if you have something that you like to do. I do like a short stretching routine. It's super basic. It literally takes like a minute and a half to like tops. But I like to do it after conference calls. Just kind of helps me break out a little bit and not feel like I've been in the same crunched little position forever. And I know, like, early on when I started working from home, I treated it like I wasn't at home anymore. But once you get into the swing of it a little bit, for my 5-minute break, I would set a timer so I knew I'd stuck to 5 minutes, but I'd like go swap loads in the laundry, or I would prep my snack for later in the day or something. So that way I didn't feel like I had to do everything the night before or all at once.
Yeah, I think the key is doing little wins that make you feel better. Little achievements. I mean, even making the bed. I mean, you've done something, right? So.
No, that's a good point. And I feel like it's hard, especially with people feeling like they're trapped in their houses, to not feel like you have to be productive every second. If you don't want to do chores, don't do chores. If it's going to pull you out of your work mindset, don't do a chore, but like do a quick Sudoku puzzle, or, something that's quick that you can do in a couple minutes that's going to be for you and a bit of a break, like a mind break, something, a little bit of a breather, not to add to stress.
Great. All right, let's do the next one. I think we got to wrap up soon.
We're getting close.
We could be here all day. Where else are we going to go?
Okay. How do you manage to focus in completing tasks when there's virtual meetings happening all the time?
Well, we touched on this. You have to start saying, do I need to be on this meeting? Like, where is my decision power? What do I need to listen into? Okay, another thing to be really clear on, which I didn't touch on, is every virtual meeting needs notes, or it needs to be recorded. And I would think that some organizations are probably worried about recording, so at least have notes. But we record a lot of the meetings so that other people in different time zones can see them. So get that going in your organization as well. Do you want to go to the next one? I just want to so we can do rapid fire. We have 4 minutes
left. Do rapid fire. How often do you check in with the team?
Me? Or no? Okay. So if you, I mean, we have Slack, so we're checking in throughout the day. People know, people should know that you're going to. The other thing, gosh, there's so much good stuff that I feel like I should be sharing that I keep missing on this call. Something really important is everybody should have shared calendars. we do that, and it's really helpful. So instead of people saying, do you have time for this and this? They look on my calendar, or they see like, how do you check in with the team? Like, when to check in with someone because of their calendar.
Yeah.
So that's a good one there. And then I would also just check, make sure you're over communicating and you're saying, hey, can we talk this morning? I want to hear what changed overnight, et cetera, if that's the business you're in.
Is there a common piece of advice that you would recommend ignoring?
Ooh, recommend ignoring?
I mean, I see a lot of people that are super eager to work from home in their PJs. I would recommend getting dressed.
Yeah, definitely get dressed. Ignore the PJ thing. Ignore the like, oh, I can watch the game while I work. These things just stress you out more in the end. And then like it's 8 o'clock at night and you feel like you haven't had a work day. Ignore this idea that you can be doing multiple things. And I know it's really hard with the childcare stuff. So that's why you have to have clear boundaries of like, no, I'm not going to be able to work full time right now. I would ignore people who get under your skin right now, because people do get under each other's skin in virtual environments because you can't read body language. I would ignore those little things that set you off and give people the benefit of the doubt. Assume the best right now. Everybody's stressed. Everybody's reeling from this. It's like we've been, all punched in the stomach. Give people the benefit of the doubt right now. Assume the best. I would ignore those feelings that you normally have when people annoy you.
Absolutely. All right, so we got 2 questions left and 2 minutes to go. Let's see if we can rapid fire these. How to avoid micromanagement when transitioning to a remote role?
I mean, you gotta establish a system of trust. If you feel like your boss is not trusting you and micromanaging you, because I actually said to my team today that I was micromanaging something too much and it was making something worse. Sometimes even having an employee who says, look, I hope you could trust me on this like you have normally in the office. And literally delivering that feedback up the chain and saying, I want to help you here. Like, what are the areas here that you feel like we're missing on communication, on trust? I know this is a new dynamic, but let me get this out for you. Trust me. I want to take things off your plate. I want you to be able to delegate and elevate. Delegate and elevate. That's my favorite phrase.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
All right, so for our last question, this person says, I'm interested in getting a remote opportunity. They say that interviewers make an impression of the candidate in the first few seconds. What matters the most to set a good impression in those initial moments?
Yeah, I mean, they say like don't have long scraggly hair that goes past your shoulders, things like that. I don't tend to. Remote is, it's all about, sorry, I don't know why I made that joke, but I was looking at my own hair. But when you read that about interview style, you're like, keep your hair back. I'm going to do that. I do think that you should actually treat it like you're coming in for an office interview. Presentation, being together. People, just because you're remote doesn't mean that you should be flouting the rules of the office. These are people who are often in offices hiring you remotely or vice versa. So treat it around the boundaries of an office. Another thing, like tone is really important when you're interviewing remotely, things like that, because body language is harder. Being calm, being cool, taking a minute to even think about something, being very inquisitive about the person you're talking to as well. So all these things really matter. I mean, now is the time for people, like there's a lot of remote jobs that are opening up, especially on PowerToFly. So it's a very exciting time. And yeah.
Keep in mind, guys, there's also a bunch
number
of chats.
Go
ahead.
We have a lot of advice on this. Oh, the most important thing about actually interviewing remotely is put your video on. And when people don't put their video on when they're remotely, it's often a trigger for people who are interviewing. They say, well, why would you can't communicate like that. If at first it's very hard to set up a relationship moving forward.
Agreed. All right, so keep in mind, guys, if you have other questions about remote interviewing, we have a ton of chat and learns on the subject. There's a bunch of recorded videos as well. You can look for the interview sessions that we have with Heather Cole. There's also interview tips and tricks on several different videos. So please take a look at our video library. So we're at the end of our hour for today. If anybody has anything last minute they want to ask, throw it up in the chat, but I haven't seen a ton of activity there. I do want to say thank you so much to everyone who took time out of their day to join us. We really, really appreciate you spending time with us, and hopefully you learned something today. KZ, thank you for taking the time. I know you've got a lot going on, same as everybody right now. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah. It was a total pleasure, and I love doing
these. And thank you to
these.
Nicole for facilitating this whole thing.
I didn't do a very good job, but you're welcome.
No, standing in circle power. All right, we're 2 minutes over. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.